I think you're onto something because I think that interpretation can work if you once you consider that um well this whole movie the groups of people, whether that's the ants, the circus bugs, everything, they seem to relate to each other via work. So whether that's the groups of
Yeah.
ants picking the food for the grasshoppers, it's the grasshoppers that exploit this kind of work.
Mm.
And then once everyone jumps onto the idea of creating the bird machine, there's a very prominent scene in the movie where they're obviously raising the bird machine up into the tree so it can swing down and scare the grasshoppers, and the circus bugs, the ants, they're all working together to move the bird up. And basically, like, I feel like the film is also not only the ants but the circus bugs. It's kind of everyone realizing that their work matters.
Yes.
And
Yes.
under that guise, you could probably say that everything that happened that led up to the moment of Princess Anna and the ants standing up to the grasshoppers and saying, the ants pick the food, the ants eat the food, and the grasshoppers leave.
Yeah.
Like that is like every piece of work that they do, it leads up to that moment.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of reinforced to in one of basically the scenes that's in the middle of the movie, where we actually see the grasshoppers dive bar, or like where they hang out when they're not exploiting the ants. And what's very interesting, like you use a very interesting phrase, well, just like I would say about 5 minutes ago, is that the where the ants live is a paradise. And what's interesting though is that when we see the dive bar that the grasshoppers live in, it's just a complete desert.
Mm.
And it's almost as if they're capitalists that have completely exploited the area that's around them, and all that's left is a dive bar that's served by a bunch of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And yeah, like all the only thing that matters in that dive bar is whatever, like, drinks they're having and the massive accumulation of grain.
Yes. Yes.
And um, again, this is the second part of Hopper's speeches. Is one of the one of his underlings, Hopper's underlings, goes like, "Oh, Hopper, like, why do we have to go back at the end of the summer? We've got so much food. Like, can't we just leave them be? Like, they're just worthless ants."
Mm.
And Hopper very deliberately goes to him. He's like, "Oh yeah, of course, they're just worthless ants.
Mm.
Um, you know, this piece of grain, it's a worthless ant." And he just throws it at the grasshopper, and he's like, "Did you feel that?" And he's like, "Oh no." He goes, "Well, what about this grain?" And he like throws another piece, and he goes, "Okay, well, what about this?" And he pulls out the like the pipe, and like
Mm.
the grain just comes rushing out, and basically these grasshoppers that were questioning his leadership get buried alive. And
Yeah.
then Hopper stands on the mound and is like, "See, guys, if we don't put these ants in line, they will run us. There is 100 of them to one of us. They
Yeah.
need to be put in their place."
Yeah.
And again, it reinforces the union idea of when bosses, basically divide and conquer, that's when you have exploited masses.
Mm. Mm.
And that what he says in that speech is obviously put in contrast of the speech he says at the beginning, and then what Princess Anna says them at the end of the movie. But it's a very powerful scene where it shows that, um, well, that basically Hopper and the Grasshoppers are, the bad capitalist boss, or, to use a phrase from Rosa Luxemburg, that they're a cartel of capitalists that are exploiting their workers, and exploiting the industry to basically sap it of all of its wealth.